The Exit Glacier is located on the Kenai Peninsula coast, just southwest of Prince William Sound and near to the fishing city of Seward. The Exit Glacier is one of 38 glaciers that flow out from the 700 square mile Harding icefield, which is the largest icefield entirely contained within the United States. In the not-too-distant past, the glacier almost reached the Resurrection River, around 1¼ miles from its present location. This retreat of the glacier has exposed the valley below and its outwash plain, defined by the rock and sediments deposited by streams of melting glacial ice. Ever more concrete proof of climate change and the resulting extreme weather grows by the year. The evidence draws extensively from detailed scientific modeling and on-the-ground verification. The official-sounding academic vocabulary it is most often communicated with, though, can make it seem abstract and far away. Sometime in the future, someone else's problem, something technology will fix. Unless, of course, the wildfire is bearing down on your town and home.
The Uncertain Life, an Inuit poem, to be spoken when suddenly in mortal danger. See, great earth, these heaps of pale bones in the wind. They crumble in the air of the wide world, in the wide world's air, pale, wind-dried bones decaying in the air.
Receding glaciers are one of the most direct ways to gauge the warming of the environment and the changing of weather patterns. Understood through sight and experience, their condition is deeply troubling, but paradoxically, the glaciers remain beautiful, as is often the terrain they leave behind. As importantly, disappearing glaciers can also deepen our focus on the loss of biodiversity, because species extinction and planetary warming share many common causes. An example is the conversion of forests to farmland and pastures for industrial agriculture. The loss of habitat and increased carbon in the air result from the same actions. Departing glaciers invite a crucial conversation apart from the dueling debates over climate change, but is essential to its resolution. Can we cultivate daily perceptions or ways of seeing that help embed the human into the long-term health of ecosystems? Can we call the fulfillment of this necessary reciprocity what is beautiful about a place?
When houses were alive, an Inuit legend. One night, a house suddenly rose up from the ground and went floating through the air. It was dark, and it is said that a swishing, rushing noise was heard as it flew through the air. The house had not yet reached the end of its road when the people inside begged it to stop. So the house stopped. They had no blubber when they stopped, so they took soft, freshly drifted snow and put it in their lamps, and it burned. They had come down at a village. A man came to their house and said, "Look, they're burning snow in their lamps. Snow can burn." But the moment these words were uttered, the lamp went out.
The Worthington Glacier is a 5,774-acre valley glacier found along Thompson Pass, 28 miles northeast of Valdez, Alaska. Like most of Alaska's glaciers, this glacier has been steadily retreating, but not as dramatically as many others because Thompson Pass has the greatest amount of snowfall in the state. Still, you can hear the meltwater from the glacier rushing beneath the ice and eventually gushing out across the outwash plain formed by the left-behind geologic debris accumulated over hundreds of years. The advance and retreat of glaciers occurs in geologic time, over thousands of years. It is a humbling moment to be close to a melting glacier and realize the water flowing from it was once ice, formed when the flora and fauna flourished in the Cenozoic era millions of years ago. Sharing many of the same climate change causes, the present retreat of glaciers parallels the mass and accelerating extinction of species now underway as both hardy and sensitive habitats disappear, as with the burning of rainforests or the filling in of wetlands. Some species, unable to adjust to their surroundings, disappear as a natural occurrence. But as humans reorganize the biosphere, mass extinctions strike at the strong and weak alike. Estimates for the loss of plant and animal life range from 20 to 50% of all living species on Earth within this century. The vanishing of vital aspects of the life community, whether they be glaciers or salmon, can be traced to the global reach of industrial and technological activities that underpin everyday agricultural and economic efforts. Prominent examples are energy production driven by fossil fuels and changes in land and sea use, mostly for food. There is a rise in carbon emissions and a parallel loss of vital species habitat. An alternative can be found in Thomas Berry's articulation of a vibrant Earth community realizing itself in the Ecozoic era. Why Ecozoic, rather than, say, an ecological era? Berry explains, Ecozoic is a term that can be used to indicate the integral functioning of life systems in their mutually enhancing relations. Two ways of seeing are essential to the Ecozoic era as espoused by Berry. The first is the perception of the universe as a communion of subjects rather than as a collection of objects. The second is taking responsibility for the larger Earth community and its natural systems from the perspective of a human as one among many species. Together, they can begin to herald a new era in human-Earth relations.
Magic Words, an Inuit Poem. In the very earliest times, when both people and animals lived on Earth, a person could become an animal if he wanted to, and an animal could become a human being. Sometimes they were people, and sometimes animals, and there was no difference. All spoke the same language. That was the time when words were like magic. The human mind had mysterious powers. A word spoken by chance might have strange consequences. It would suddenly come alive, and what people wanted to happen could happen. All you had to do was say it. Nobody could explain this. That's the way it was.
The Portage Glacier is on the Kenai Peninsula 50 miles southeast of downtown Anchorage, Alaska, with access from Seward Highway. The glacier is now located south of Portage Lake, but once, as recently as 1914, covered the lake with ice ending at its far western shore. Since the early 1900s, the glacier has receded a little more than 3 miles. This retreat was primarily driven by rising temperatures, causing the calving of unstable ice into Portage Lake at the glacier's edge. Often, glaciers, as they fade from view, can be recognized by the outwash plains of glacial till they leave behind. The disappearance of the Portage Glacier, however, has left Portage Lake as a beautiful but scoured basin, with little evidence of the glacier that once defined it. Thomas Berry asks, what is the basic question facing us to further the human presence in the Ecozoic era? The answer touches upon all aspects of contemporary life, how the meeting of basic human needs with its allied technologies can be made coherent with the other natural systems of the planet. Berry writes, it is not simply a matter of altering our ways of acting on a minor scale by recycling, by mitigating pollution, reducing our energy consumption, limiting our use of the automobile, or by fewer development projects. Our efforts will be in vain if our purpose is to make the present industrial system acceptable. They must all be done, but in order to build a new order of things. What are some of the existing bioregional practices that can help us move in this direction? Adaptive and green infrastructures can be understood as building upon natural systems to satisfy the infrastructure needs of our communities. For example, green infrastructure has become a viable alternative to conventional hard infrastructure stormwater management by imitating the local hydrology rather than reordering it. From this perspective, every infrastructure improvement becomes an opportunity to make towns and cities more convivial, healthier, and beautiful places to live. The benefits of this approach extend to the entire life community: biodiversity conservation, flood hazard reduction, and cleaner water and air. Community-supported and regenerative organic agriculture is key to a trustworthy and resilient bioregional food supply. It is most successful when building upon the health of soil and local ecological processes. Not dependent on carbon-based pesticides or fertilizers, organic farms use less energy and release fewer carbon emissions. As importantly, food becomes more nutritious and delicious. The restoration of natural systems renews and maintains ecosystem health by repairing damage to indigenous ecosystems. Examples include the recreation of healthy habitat for salmon, the cleanup of urban brownfields, tree planting in deforested areas, and bringing to the surface and renewing buried rivers and streams. The restoration of native landscapes reinforces a kinship between the human and the non-human, fusing them into one understanding of community. Shared understandings are critical as we further bioregional sustainability and restoration activities in the Ecozoic era. Berry offers the following. Earth is a one-time endowment and primary. It is subject to irreversible damage in the major patterns of its functioning. Each component of the earth is integral with every other component. This is also true of the living beings of the earth and their relations with one another. Temperatures in the Arctic region remain at near record highs, warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. The result is eroding natural systems that the entire life community draw upon for sustenance. For example, bioregional food webs. Indigenous peoples report that in a warming Arctic, access to our subsistence foods is shrinking, and it is becoming more hazardous to hunt and fish. At the same time, thawing permafrost and more frequent and higher storm surges increasingly threaten our homes, schools, airports, and utilities. In the natural course of events, 1 to 5 species per year can be expected to go extinct. In contrast, researchers estimate we are now losing species at 1,000 to 10,000 times more than this, with dozens of species disappearing every day. Melting glaciers, vanishing ice, is the de facto canary in the coal mine for biodiversity loss and planetary climate change. Looking forward, what fundamental possibility does Tom Berry see for the human within the Earth community? He writes, "The greatest of human discoveries in the future will be the discovery of human intimacy with all those other modes of being that live with us on this planet, inspire our art and literature, reveal that numinous world whence all things come into being, and with which we exchange the very substance of life.
And I think over again my small adventures, when with a shore wind I drifted out in my kayak and thought I was in danger. My fears, those small ones that I thought so big, for all the vital things I had to get and to reach. And yet, there is only one great thing, the only thing, to live, to see in huts and on journeys the great day that dawns and the light that fills the world.